Hi, I'm Patrick Giguère with Cosmic Alchemist Astrology, and welcome to November. So this is my November 2021 astrological forecast and analysis. So I'm going to get into the basic themes for this month, what will generally, what the themes of what will generally transpire, and what it all means to us, to our lives, and to our evolution and our growth and all that. So this is going to be an interesting one. It's going to get more exciting. And I've been frustrated for a long time, and I'm sure everybody watching has been frustrated with sort of the general, just kind of boredom and kind of the facepalm factor. Just day after day as we deal with just absurd ridiculousness, and so many of the people in the world just don't see it. So the boredom is going to start going away, especially by the end of this month. So before I get into the thick of it, thank you to everybody who watches this channel, who subscribes, likes the videos, gives me a comment. It's all very encouraging. I appreciate the encouragement, and it all helps the channel do better, especially the comments. It always bumps the videos up in search algorithms. So I appreciate it. If you've not subscribed already, I ask that you do so. I respectfully ask that you do so. The big perk is that you get an alert when you subscribe. So I upload a video, YouTube lets you know. So thanks either way. So let's get into this month here. And the way I'm looking at this is I'm looking at November as a point where, like, humanity basically wins its first battle in this fight against being a medical guinea pig for the drug companies, who again sponsor mainstream media. They sponsor for-profit media and non-profit media. It's about 60% in non-election years. So regular old run-of-the-mill year, they give media 60% of its funding and its sponsorship. So they've got a lot of power. And it's interesting because, drugs and the medical system it's basically the strategy that's been picked to implement this idea of this world corporate communist government. Can't do it militarily, people fight back, but so they've chosen to create scares so people volunteer to become medical guinea pigs. They're creating hysteria and playing on people's fear and just all of their fears of getting sick, dying, fear of the unknown. So, and it's about, especially in the developed countries that have had these shots available, these shots of this experimental gene therapy, it's been about 40 to 90% effective. Here in the States, they say it's about 60. I think it's a lot lower. I think it's probably more like 40, 45, maybe 50, but they lie about everything. So yeah, we're gonna win our first battle against this as a human family. I've been seeing a lot of videos where people are saying, oh, this is the month where the Illuminati's plan falls apart. It's not that simple. We'll win a battle, but there will be many battles ahead of this. When you look at the Star Wars, episode, what is that? Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back, that's not just a title, it's a statement, it's an axiom. And it's like one of those givens in life. It's like, yeah, you may rebel, you may win, but the Empire will always be looking to strike back. So that's what that's all about. It's absolutely true. So yeah, we're going to win a battle, but the Empire is going to try to strike back, and I think it'll be in pretty short order. So really, you know, in this little summary in the beginning here, the biggest, if I had to give you one event this month that has the most meaning and has the greatest effect on the world and on our lives, I definitely have to say it's the lunar eclipse in Taurus on November 19th. So yeah, that's definitely the biggest thing here, and that is going to be opening this window for us to win this battle against these drug companies that are puppeteering governments all over the world, and, you know, have the politicians bribed and blackmailed. So yeah, that is going to open a window for us to do that. But eclipses, you know, we have 2 eclipse seasons a year, so you get the solar and then the lunar, or you get the lunar and the solar, depending on which node that the luminaries are conjuncting, so depending on whether it's Rahu or Ketu. So in this case, we have the lunar eclipse on November 19th, and then the solar in the opposite sign, Scorpio, on December 4th. So, you know, and I made a video already about this solar eclipse in December. If you haven't caught it, it was my video about, you know, the potential bio attack or the emergence of a new virus variant in the New York subway system. That video, in a nutshell, that video was all about how Department of Homeland Security ran a drill. They ran a biohazard drill from like October 18th through the 29th in the New York subway system. And they were pumping what they call a non-toxic gas into the ventilation system in the subway system. And it had oligos in it, so it had single strands of DNA and RNA, which is really bizarre. So, you know, the thing I was wondering about is this like a setup for the next false flag? Because ever since 9/11, and even before that, you know, every time a terrorist attack that ends up being used for political reasons happens, there's always, security forces are always running a drill about that very scenario. So 9/11, there was an air defense exercise that the Air Force was running, and the training scenario was hijacked airliners. And in the 7/7 bombings in the London Underground, the London subway, the London police were running a training scenario about, you know, bombing in the subway. And it goes on and on. Even the Boston Marathon bombing, the Boston police were running drills, anti-terrorism drills, and the scenario was that somebody in a crowd had, you know, a homemade bomb. So it always happens this way. So it's possible that as we start to defeat this whole apparatus of, you know, the global elites, corporate apparatus that puppeteers the government, they may strike back by trying to distract us and basically juice up the virus narrative about how it's like the deadly black plague and it's going to kill everybody. So they may try to stage some sort of a bio attack, or even, you know, release some kind of a vector and say it's a new COVID variant. So that's what that looks like, potentially. So basically this, when we look at nakshatras, we look at the smaller constellations within the zodiac signs where these eclipses are going on, we have the lunar eclipse in Kritika. So Kritika is an interesting nakshatra. It's mostly in Aries, partly in Aries, partly in Taurus. And it deals with truthfulness, it deals with bluntness, with criticism, criticality. It's very driven. It doesn't sugarcoat anything. It can deal with aggressiveness, explosive temper, and it's referred to as a cutter because the symbol for it is a blade, so it cuts, it pierces. And those themes can go in a lot of different directions. But this, let me get my degrees here. I don't want to give the wrong info. Oh, come on. So, yeah. Lunar eclipse is at 3 degrees. Taurus. So, this is conjunct a fixed star that's within Taurus. It's called Algol. Algol is one of the most dreaded stars in the whole zodiac. And it was considered a star of war. Well, has been for thousands of years. And basically, throughout history, there were times when kings or rebels or warlords or queens or whoever, empresses, emperors, wouldn't launch wars until planets were conjunct with Algol to ensure their victory. Algol, a way of looking at it is it's basically the head of Medusa, the head of a Gorgon. I'm going to make a video about this in more detail because the mythology is just so rich. It's pretty amazing. But basically this lunar eclipse is conjunct with the head of Medusa. Now if you've ever read the story of Perseus, if you've seen the films, there's one in the 80s, there was one like within the last 10 years called Clash of the Titans, based on the myth of Perseus and Medusa. Perseus was a hero who, in the original myth, he was defeating a king who had basically kind of kidnapped he had his mother under kind of house arrest and was, basically abusive towards her, very possessive. So he was trying to rescue her, but then in the Clash of the Titans, the film, they kind of changed the story, and Perseus had to rescue the Princess Andromeda from being devoured by the Kraken. So in that story, basically the princess's mother, the queen of Joppa. So Joppa was it was a Greek city-state on the coast of like modern Lebanon or Israel, called Jaffa, now. But this queen had basically offended they'd done a lot to offend the gods, and so basically the gods, Zeus said, well, I'm going to destroy your city. I'm going to have Poseidon, the god of the ocean, unleash the Kraken to destroy your city unless you sacrifice your daughter. And I think one of the things in the story was that the queen was saying her daughter was more beautiful than Aphrodite, so that was kind of the last straw. But so Perseus was tasked with going to retrieve the head of Medusa, and that was the only thing that could defeat his enemy in either version of the story, whether it was the Kraken or whether it was this king that was kind of holding his mother kind of under house arrest. So basically it's a story about going into our unconscious minds, into the underworld, and facing our deepest fears, our deepest emotional baggage. Because anytime you deal with creatures in the deep ocean, or you deal with going into the underworld, you're going into your unconscious. So yeah, Perseus goes basically into this cave. He goes into the underworld, and Medusa's sleeping there, which is her sleeping in a cave deals with unresolved unconscious emotions and memories, thoughts, issues. So he has to go in there, but he can't look directly at her. because her gaze will turn him to stone. So he has all these magical weapons given to him by the gods. He has a brass shield that's polished to a sheen, and he can use it as a mirror to kind of get in position, you know, to where he can decapitate her without getting turned to stone. He's got the magic shoes from Hermes with the wings, you know, where he can travel swiftly through the air. And then he has, which deals a lot with thinking and communication, because, you know, Hermes is Mercury by another name. And he's given, by the god of the underworld, Hades or Pluto, he's given a magical helmet, which is basically the ability to use his higher mind, to think critically, to be objective and not get caught in his unconscious emotions. So he retrieves the head of Medusa, he brings it back, and he holds up the head of Medusa, you know, by the, you know, she's got the snake hair, or snake's four hair, holds it up to the enemy, whether it's the king or whether it's the kraken, and, you know, this enemy just basically turns to stone and crumbles. And when you look at this in myths and in stories and fairy tales and lore, turning to stone is just basically being paralyzed. It's like you're facing something that you simply can't deal with. It's just too shocking, and it just rattles you to the core, and you can't act, you can't think, you can't speak. It's basically about people being unprepared to face what's in their unconscious, and so they freeze up, and they can't do anything. They go kind of catatonic. So that's what I'm seeing with this lunar eclipse, is that basically we the people, and then people among us who have access to information, who have influence, who have kind of a brand that's recognizable, people who have media visibility, who are trying to help us. On the grand scale, on the world scale, they are going to be the ones who, I think they're going to take information. So this head of Medusa that's going to be shown to the enemy, to the monsters, you know, to the titans. You know, you can see the global elite, corporate communist elite as the titans. These people are going to bring information out into the open that is going to be like this head of Medusa that's going to paralyze, you know, these Ivy League corporate clowns that have been puppeteering all of our governments. So yeah, we're in for some shocking things, and people who have not yet come to terms, checking my time, have not yet come to terms with the reality and the idea that the television doesn't, or the radio or the internet, the news on there doesn't tell you the truth just because you went to college and you have a career and you're so damn smart and you own a house and your parents, grandparents were in World War II or you were in the military. If people haven't faced the reality that most people in power they're liars, they're unscrupulous, and they're total mercenaries just looking for a paycheck. And they don't tell you the truth because they think you're so shit hot. If you haven't faced that reality, whatever information is coming out, whatever this head of Medusa turns out to be, that gets shown to the world to paralyze humanity's enemies, then you too are going to be, you're basically going to turn to stone. You're going to be paralyzed, and your unconscious emotions are going to paralyze you because you're not ready to face them. You're basically going to realize that your worldview is based on narcissism. So yeah, this will be pretty serious. For people who have faced this, who realize that, you know, people who control all the resources in the world and have all the power in the world don't tell us the truth just because, you know, we think democracy is so sacred, then those people are going to feel a sense of liberation from this, who have prepared themselves for whatever the hell it is that's coming out. So yeah, An interesting thing about these eclipses happening on the Taurus and Scorpio axis is that the Taurus-Scorpio axis it's considered the most mysterious part of the zodiac, because Scorpio is all about mystery and hidden things, and it's the underworld. It's the home for the planet Pluto, so it's the underworld. It deals with plots, scandals, conspiracies, mysteries, secrets, taboos. Can even deal like with criminal activity in some cases. This eclipse season will be all about, again, the plots, scandals, conspiracies of, symbolized by Scorpio, of people in power controlling most of the resources on the planet. Taurus. So Taurus is wealth, resources, and it's like, business leaders of finance. So drug companies, even leaders of drug companies. So this lunar eclipse and then this solar eclipse 2 weeks later are going to deal with all this stuff. We're going to have a little victory, but it's only one battle. We're going to have to keep it up. This is going to take some years, I have to be honest. So many people out there are they're peddling it like whatever is going to happen this month is going to happen, and it's going to be jubilee, and it's all going to be great. It's not going to be that easy. But this is the beginning of the end for these bastards who are trying to turn us into their medical guinea pigs and just rule our lives and basically try to make every country just like communist China. It's not going to happen, but they're not going to give up without a fight. And so that's my point again with that solar eclipse on December 4th, is that solar eclipse takes place in the Nakshatra constellation of Jeshta. Jeshta it's where you're really getting into the dark side of Scorpio. So Jeshta is like, people are paranoid. They can be like totally obsessed. They can be like narcissistic, sociopathic, just totally obsessed with themselves and just getting their way. And they'll do anything to get their way. And they can be, in their paranoia and in their obsession, in their self-obsession, they can be very just reactive. I was listening to, a very experienced Vedic astrologer yesterday, and he was talking about how with Jeshta, it's like if somebody fell into like a well or a hole in the ground and they couldn't, get out of it right away. And people just came up to the edge of the well to look in and see if they were okay. That person in the bottom, just being just emotionally, kind of knee-jerk reactive, would just look at those people and be like, I'm going to get you, and I'm going to get you, and I'm going to get you, and you, and you. So it's kind of like lashing out, from fear and from paranoia. So if that New York subway thing happens, that's what it is it's this paranoid, fearful reaction out of this global corporate communist elite they're losing their power, and they have to lose their power. And it's scheduled because, for one, as an American, next year we're going to have the Pluto return for America. So that basically means we have to either get back to our original values of freedom and, fairness, equality, and all that stuff, or we just keep going into this corporate communism and end up like China, end up going through what Australia is going through, where you have to check into an app every hour or whatever the hell it is, and you can only go 2 miles from your house and you have to get permission to travel farther from that. That's what the global corporate communist elite want, and they basically want to have a revival of medieval feudalism. And I think that this is why like flat Earth has been like rolled out again, is because they want us to go back to the view of peasants in the medieval times who they're like, it's all in the Bible, don't worry about that science, just look at the Bible, it tells you all about flat Earth and dome over it, and I don't have anything against the idea of flat Earth. It's not for me, but I don't have anything against it. But I think it's a psyop. That's why it's made its reappearance right now. So, yeah, they want to take us back to medieval feudalism, and we can't let that happen, or else we're screwed, and every generation thereafter is screwed. And I don't see this happening, but we're gonna have to fight for it. You know, we're not just gonna be able to sit back and just, you know, let Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or, you know, whatever messiah that comes along do all the work. It's not gonna be that easy. So we got to break out of our Cold War brattishness in order to get our lives back and to get the world back. All right. So, yeah, another thing, you know, some last thoughts about this lunar eclipse. It's an Algol, it's conjunct Algol, the head of Medusa, this fixed star. And it's in Kritika, which is blades. The moon is conjunct Rahu for this lunar eclipse. Rahu, the symbol for Rahu is a decapitated head. So this is dealing with decapitation, you know, and then Kritika is partly in Aries, so Aries is the head. So, and Kritika deals with leadership as well. So this is about the decapitation of leadership. Leadership will be decapitated all around the world somehow. Leadership as we know it. And, you know, it's interesting because Rahu and Ketu they've basically come back around to where they were around March, well, spring 2021. They're not quite, to where they were in the spring of 2003. They're not quite where they were in March 2003, but they're back to that 7-degree mark. So March 2003 was when the coalition of the U.S. and U.K. and some smaller countries invaded Iraq and decapitated the Iraqi leadership. So I don't see a lot of big international war coming. I think all the war taking place is going to be internal, inside countries. In 2003, Saturn was in Cancer, so that's, you know, Cancer is the sign of freedom and just kind of like, you know, sort of doing what you want to do. Saturn's in Capricorn now, so it's in the opposite sign. And so basically, Saturn being at home in Capricorn, it's containing governments. I think it's not letting governments go out and go overseas and start a bunch of bullshit, you know, for-profit wars at the behest of their corporate masters. So I think the form that these wars are going to take, and that the form that this decapitation of leadership is going to take, is it's at home in every country whose leaders have been bribed and blackmailed by the drug companies, by the big banks, you know, the oil companies, all that stuff. So yeah, this is going to be the start of the decapitation of leadership as we know it. All right. And what else? Yeah, I don't want to throw too much more in this summary. One more thing, though. November 20th, the Jupiter is coming back to Aquarius. This is pretty important. You know, not earth-shaking so much like the that lunar eclipse, but it's going to, you know, when you think about like dominoes falling, dominoes get set up and they bump into each other. To me, it's like the lunar eclipse is setting the stage for Jupiter to come back to Aquarius. So Jupiter was in Aquarius back in what, May, June, and it retrograded in the Capricorn. So November 20th, the next day from that lunar eclipse, Jupiter comes back into Aquarius. And I think this is going to give basically humanity some gifts. And Jupiter gives the gifts of spirituality and truth and higher knowledge and divine consciousness. So, and Aquarius is the sign of we the people, the sign of humanity. For us here in America, Aquarius is the third sign of media, the third house of media and communications. So yeah, I see Jupiter gifting humanity with like a truth bomb. This takes place, so Jupiter will be in the Nakshatra of Dhanishta. So Dhanishta, this is an interesting one. It's Mars ruled, so it's driven, it's purposeful. It's called the rich one, and the symbols are the drum and the flute, and it's all about marching to the beat of your own drum. But it's called the rich one because it's a nakshatra constellation of prosperity and riches. And having these musical instruments as its symbols, it deals with proper timing, appropriate timing, good timing, right place, right time, kind of energy. Ruled by the 8 Vasus, so the 8 gods that give earthly wealth. It's kind of a double-edged sword because drums and flutes, they're empty. That's what allows them to make sound. So it's like there's some qualities of materialism, superficiality, shallowness with this constellation. It can feel like things are missing. But at the same time, it's all about making friends and expanding knowledge through contacts and through friendships and through social activity. But it's interesting too because the personality of Dhanishta, it can like cause problems in relationships, marriages, friendships, there's also an energy of like extreme expectations in Dhanishta that are very difficult to meet, almost impossible to meet, which leads to disappointment and discord between people. And there can definitely be like some narcissism and self-centeredness too. So when I look at all that, it totally reminds me of this whole, it's the Trump media and technology group, which is Donald Trump's new media and tech company that just, I think a week ago, it went public on the NASDAQ. So I think what he's going to do with this is he's going to bring a lot of different experts and people together who have been censored and basically blackballed by mainstream media, who haven't been allowed to get their message out. Very credible people with great credentials, but they are not saying what the drug companies that give most of the sponsorship money to media want them to say. So they're called kooks and quacks and nutballs and conspiracy theorists. So I think this has to do with him launching this company, and I think he's going to have it's like going to be a news outlet. There's going to be like documentaries and documentary series. It's going to be kind of like like Gaiam, where you subscribe to it. You can get all these different things. You can get news, but then you can get shows, like documentary type shows. He'll probably have like a social media app. It's basically, it's going to cater to everybody who doesn't want to watch Fox or CNN or NPR or CNBC or Breitbart, any of that crap. So it's pretty interesting. But the caution I put in there is like, with the flute and the drum, there can be some kind of like Pied Piper kind of thing going on too. And I'm always telling people, I'm like, you can't have messiahs in the age of Aquarius, which we've just gone into. So it's like people who don't like the Democrats treat Donald Trump like a messiah. So it's like everybody's heard of libtards. Well, there are Trump-tards too. So you don't want to treat anybody like a messiah. You want to be your own leader. So yeah, with this drum and this flute, you know, there's kind of like a Pied Piper kind of a theme to it. So, you know, I've just been telling people, don't take anybody at face value, because really it's like, the way I see him is like, he's kind of a better bad guy, because when you look at this whole idea of a global elite and an Illuminati and all that stuff, there's a rebellion inside of this global elite or this Illuminati, because, you know, years ago they were brought in and told, hey, we're going to make a bunch of money and we're going to stifle competition, you know, and it's all going to be great. And then these people started realizing that, you know, one day they and their families would be slated for oppression or, you know, like extermination. So among this like elite strata, there people within that are turning against the mainstream of that. So, but yeah, wait for, you know, Trumpy's going to make a return here, as a media, as a tech CEO, basically a media, you know, mogul. And it's like I was saying back in 2019 and 2020, and other astrologers were saying it, he's going to be more powerful than a president. So that's pretty interesting. And yeah, what was the other thing? I'm going to leave the summary at that, and then we'll get into the days, and we'll give you some more detail from there. So here's the end of the summary. Do a bathroom break, get a snack, and we'll come back for the second half of this where I get into the individual days. So thanks again for tuning in. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of the days this month, November, with the significant transits and conjunctions and all that stuff. All right, so I'm going to jump to November 4th. Not a whole lot going on in the first few days, except November 1st, from a certain standpoint, is actually New Year's Day. So in ancient times, they had multiple calendars. There was a solar calendar, a lunar calendar. And so, you know, we're talking in Europe and Celtic countries, even Germanic countries, the October 31st, Halloween, which before was called Samhain, it was the New Year's Eve. So, and it was a special day because the barriers between the physical world and the spirit world were thinner. And so it was a time when you could communicate with your ancestors, or, you know, just people who had, you know, gone before you. And so the next day, November 1st, was then New Year's Day. And this is also connected in the Northern Hemisphere, basically, to the natural world and the kind of the agricultural cycle. So, you know, right around November 1st, the sun is basically halfway through Libra. And Libra is the fall position of the sun. It's where the sun's in detriment. It's where the sun is debilitated, you know, because the sun is a leader, a monarch, a ruler. And like Libra's like the marketplace. And, you know, the king or the queen doesn't go out and make deals in the marketplace. Royals rule. So, not a great place for the sun. And the other thing is that this debilitation sign of Libra is the exact opposite from the sun's exaltation in Aries. So Aries is where, from our point of view in the Northern Hemisphere, the sun passes over the equator, and then the days are longer than the nights. So that's when the sun is on the offensive. And in Libra, the sun's more on a defensive. The sun's on a decline. So that's very much tied to why there was this. With Samhain, with Halloween, it was New Year's Eve, and then November 1st is the New Year's Day. And if you want to get even nerdy about it, if you've read or seen you know, any Tolkien novels or movies like Lord of the Rings, Hobbit in particular, the dwarves have Durin's Day, and this comes up in both the Hobbit novel and in the movies. And basically, Durin was the father of the dwarves, and they have this, the dwarves who are trying to reclaim their homeland, in the lonely mountain. They have this map, and it's written in runes, and they can't read it, so they have to go to Elrond the elf, and he's basically saying, "Wow, what a serendipity! You came here right on Durin's Day on November 1st under a full moon, and these runes can only be read under a full moon." So, yeah, some fun kind of lore with that. So anyway, let's get into it. November 4th, new moon in Libra. So this is going to be a new moon, as always, sun and moon conjunction. It's going to be in Libra, 18 degrees. And there's also going to be Mercury and Mars in there. So that's going to lend some qualities to this whole thing. So I made some notes about this. So this new moon conjunction is taking place. It's in Libra. It's in the constellation Nakshatra of Swati. So Swati is ruled by Rahu. So Rahu is the trickster, the master of desires, our drive to be good at something, to be perfect at something. And Rahu is, also the trickster too. So this can be, there's kind of like a sharp quality to this, because what tricksters do is, in all mythologies, tricksters will basically call out the other gods and goddesses for their hypocrisies and basically not so much their shortcomings, but basically where they're, kind of having double standards with the people they deal with. So, and the other thing too is, as the trickster, Rahu, tricksters are always outcasts. They always kind of walk by the beat of their own drum and they do their own thing. So Swati is independent. It's about following your own path, walking to the beat of your own drum, not being contained by others. Swati is ruled by Vayu, the wind god. So, Swati is like the wind. It's trustworthy, but it's also having a desire to move and come and go freely, and just being allowed to do what you want. Now Swati also has these kind of communicative abilities, the abilities to sell something, to persuade people, to sway people's opinions, to steer the direction of conversations, the gift of persuasion. And then, the new moon. New moon is always about planting seeds, always about conceiving something. Full moons are like the birth, new moon is the conception. So this is, because it's Libra, it's the home of Venus, it's like the social sign. So this is basically planting the seeds, in my opinion. This new moon is about planting the seeds to connect with others, to create alliances, and basically, wanting to really get close to people and be able to share ourselves and help each other out. And I think it's also there's something about convincing communication with this new moon, because you've got Mars and Mercury in there. So Mercury has the lower degree. Mercury's at 4 degrees, Mars is at 9. So Mercury is basically ruling that conjunction. So Mercury, intellect, thinking, communication, is going to use the vitality and the energy and the will to achieve of Mars to plant these seeds for alliances, for social relationships, for getting to know people, making deals. So yeah, I think this is speaking, because it's leading up to this lunar eclipse on the 19th. I think it's speaking to the beginning stages of this opposition to this, globalist corporate communism that's trying to use all of us as medical test subjects, with their shots full of experimental gene therapy. And, basically these elite globalist corporate communists wanting to control all the assets in the world, just a small group of people doing it. So yeah, this is about these alliances in the world being formed to create this opposition. Now it's interesting, like Swati is both spiritual and kind of shallow and possibly materialistic at the same time. So that's kind of interesting. It's like everything in this world has kind of a double-edged sword. But, I think, and Libra is also the sign of relationships, marriages, relationships, any kind of partnership. And, I think this is basically about how, especially with Swati, it's about how, no relationship or partnership is just all about gooey, mushy feelings. Like, there's a lot of practicality in it. People need help from other people because everybody's good at something different. So it's like, these alliances and partnerships, especially to stop this whole elitist, globalist, corporate, communist takeover. It has philosophical and spiritual motivations and underpinnings, but it's also practical. People have to be able to bring things to the table to help each other. Now, an interesting tidbit about Swati. Swati is short for Saraswati. So Saraswati is a goddess of literature and arts. Some people say that actually Sarah in the Bible is short for Saraswati. So, very interesting idea. But yeah, little sidebar. But yeah, so I think what's going to be coming out is creative publications, forms of art, media, in order to build these alliances and to get this opposition going. And like I said earlier in the video, this whole Trump media and technology group is going to be becoming more and more public. It's already went public on the stock market, on the NASDAQ, and hundreds of millions of dollars have been raised. Now, as I say this, Donald Trump's not a messiah. He's not the answer to anybody's problems, but we need some sort of opposition in this world right now because it's turning into a one-party world. It's either like you've either had your shot or you're a horrible person and you're part of the problem. So, we need some opposition here. And then last thing about this new moon, in Libra, at 0 degrees of Libra, you've got the fixed star Arcturus, and Arcturus is a star of success and prosperity in the arts and the fine arts. So yeah, I think look for publications that basically lay the groundwork for this alliance of this opposition in the world. So then we move on to November 6th. Rahu will be casting a yod. So again, a yod, finger of God. It's a Western astrology concept. So it's like the word yod from Hebrew. But it's basically kind of creates this like Y formation in a chart. And so a planet in a given house and sign will look at a house 6 houses away and 8 houses away. So Rahu is looking at, from Taurus, it's looking at Libra, 6 houses away, and Sagittarius, 8 houses away. So, in Libra, on the 6th, you've got Sun, you've got Mars and Mercury, and then in Sagittarius, you have Venus. So, this to me is speaking to basically, so everything that has to do with Taurus. Taurus deals with, wealth, assets, quality. Kind of being your own self-advocate. It also deals with finance. It deals with business leaders. And then for America, Taurus is the 6th house of enemies. So there's different ways to look at it. If you you look at it from the standpoint of the world, it's basically like, a way you can look at it is that the world of finance or like business leaders are they're basically trying to make partnerships that will bring kind of good fortune, because you know Sagittarius is the original 9th house, so it deals with luck, you know, good fortune and luck and all that stuff. That's one way to put it. But then on the other hand, you know, just for like the people in the world, it's like they want to, it's people wanting to make partnerships and basically learn things so that they can improve their material environment. So that's an interesting one. Thing with yods though is like it's the finger of God, so it basically shakes the earth and shakes things up. So you know, you can read into that one. What else? Kind of jumping around here. November 10th, you know, not a huge thing, but we have Mercury, Mars conjunct in Libra. So this is basically about like aggressive, enthusiastic, even like kind of dominating kind of communication. Now this is in, this has to do with relationships because it's Libra for the world. So, you know, this could cause some bumps and hiccups in people's relationships, you know, just possibly communicating too angrily, too aggressively. You look at it from the standpoint of America, Libra is the 11th house of we the people of humanity. So it's that Mars-Mercury conjunction and the sun's in there. So this is speaking, to me, this is about people's anger. This is about people communicating and voicing their anger. So, you know, it's about friggin' time. And then let's move on. What is the next one? November 13th. Let me just check my check the app here. Oh yeah. So yeah, November 13th, this is interesting. So we have Mercury and Uranus in direct opposition, direct aspect to each other. So Uranus is in Aries, 18 degrees in retrograde. Mercury, 18 degrees Libra, opposite sign, but same degree. So when planets look at each other, they influence each other. So this is basically, you know, for the world, it's Uranus in Aries, so it's the original first house. Mercury is in Libra. So this is about basically, I think, making changes in the way that we deal with other people. Dealing with people, communicating with people differently by making changes, like to ourselves. Because Uranus turns over status quos and paradigms, and it's in Aries, the sign of the self, or like what goes on in your head. And then that Mercury is in Libra, which is all the other people in the world, all your relationships and partnerships. So, yeah, it's about basically changing ourselves, changing our attitudes and our perceptions so that we can do that. So that we can kind of deal with people differently and, you know, improve our relationships. Then we're going to jump to the 17th. So 17th of November, the big event here. We have Moon and Uranus conjunct in Aries. So again, this is the self. This is about thinking about how do we, you know, this is an invitation from the universe. change yourself, change your emotional self so that you can navigate your world better and, not feel like you're kind of at the mercy of other people, especially people in power just making crazy decisions, very selfishly. So, yeah, pretty interesting. And let me check the degree here. Yeah, and then by that point, too, Mars is at 18 degrees of Libra. So opposite Uranus and Moon. So this can also be like resistance to changing ourselves. We can have angry outbursts when communicating with other people because we just feel overwhelmed. Our whole sense of self is kind of getting turned over. And definitely with this, the eclipse on the 19th, 2 days later, and then 3 days later, Jupiter coming into Aquarius, this could really rock people's sense of self because they thought they could just watch TV or listen to the radio or read the internet and know how the world worked, and they thought they were clever, intelligent, informed people, but then new information gets introduced, and because their egos were fragile and basically kind of shallow, their whole world gets rocked. So that's something to chew on. Lunar Eclipse on the 19th in Taurus. I spent so much time on this in the intro. Don't want to get into it a lot. But one thing with this, one little tidbit I'm going to throw out there is I think this is setting up Joe Biden's fall. So you've heard me say it before. I don't think Joe Biden, I think he's going to succumb to health problems by like March 1st. And you're already seeing him like doing this clenching thing with his fists. People do that in pretty advanced stages of dementia. So he's got I think he's got the angel of death circling him, to be honest. I don't wish any illness or unwellness on the guy or on anybody, but he doesn't look well. So he has this, and on top of all these health issues, I think people in his circles, his allies, are going to start throwing him under the bus more and more, especially the media. So this lunar eclipse takes place in his 7th house of relationships. So it's basically like the emotional mind of his friends and partners and allies, and is basically kind of darkened. And it's right near his natal Uranus and his natal Saturn. So it's like, it's also about, Uranus and Saturn there, it's like karma of having things shaken up, and even like getting your whole business and social and work life just kind of like shaken up. And then too, he's got, K2 is basically closing in on his natal sun. K2 is in his first house right now, his ascendant house at 7 degrees. His natal sun is 4 degrees. So when K2 darkens your sun, that can basically like eclipse you. So it can either like, you either go to an isolated place, like a hospital, or you take a retreat or a sabbatical, or you can have some kind of health problem that like literally takes you out. The solar eclipse, December 4th, is going to be even stronger because that is going to take place, near his, let me see, let me get the degrees on that. I don't want to talk out of my ass here. Yeah, solar eclipse at 18 degrees, so not right on his ascendant degree, but pretty close to it. So, you could even see him eclipsed. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens to him, but I don't think he's long for the earth. Yeah, his ascendant degree is 22 degrees. of Scorpio. So he's got a solar eclipse taking place 4 degrees away. So yeah, that could send him to the hospital in December. And then, you know, by March, we get that news that he passed. It's what it's kind of looking like. Or at least can't continue on in office, but we'll see. But yeah, this lunar eclipse, it's like, it's kind of setting the stage. Things are getting set. So then moving on to the 20th, and I spoke about this before, you've got Jupiter, let me check my time, not bad. Jupiter in Aquarius. So Jupiter comes back to the sign of humanity, we the people, Aquarius. So Jupiter brings gifts, good fortune, especially gifts of truth, gifts of spirituality, gifts of, you know, the higher consciousness, higher thinking, objective spiritual thinking. But Jupiter does bring truth, especially when you look at it from the standpoint of America, because Aquarius is the 3rd house of communication and media. And Neptune, the planet of media, because media is a virtual reality, and Neptune is illusions, it's self-delusion, which media is all of those things. To have Jupiter there, it's going to bring some newfound truth to media. You know, we're going to start cutting through all the lies and deception of for-profit and non-profit media, because it's all funded and sponsored and donated to by the same people. So yeah, that's a pretty big deal here right after that lunar eclipse. And again, that lunar eclipse is that, you know, it's Perseus holding up that Medusa head to turn the enemies into stone. So yeah, that's a big day with that Jupiter. And then the 23rd, got a Sun and K2 conjunction in Scorpio. So Scorpio, again, it's all secret things, hidden things, deep unconscious emotions and thoughts. It's conspiracies, scandals, cover-ups, all that fun stuff. So, and with the Sun in Scorpio, it's a time of the year when you reflect on yourself deeply, because again, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's past harvest time, and in agricultural societies, there's a lot less work to do during the winter, so it's time to reflect, time to look deeper into yourself, to see what changes you want to make into yourself, and to plan your next year out. You know, it's the incubation time for nature. So the Sun is in Scorpio doing all those things, but it's also looking into like our deeper unconscious, kind of the hidden world of ourselves and in the entire world. And then Scorpio, then K2 comes in there. K2 is at home in Scorpio. You know, Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, but then, you know, Pluto and K2 are basically co-rulers. So K2 comes in. K2 is going to, it does eclipse the Sun, but it also, when it eclipses it, it brings truth. It cuts away illusions, because again, K2 is that, the symbol is that body without the head, so it has no emotions and no desires, and it just wants spirituality and truth and the real deal. So yeah, that can really make some truth dawn on us. And then the 25th of November, we've got Mercury K2. So again, 7 degrees of Scorpio where the Sun met K2. And this is basically like our intellect being eclipsed, because Mercury is the intellect, Mercury's communication, thinking. It's like the intellect is eclipsed by K2. But again, eclipses, when the lights turn off, that spotlight that was in your face and blinding you, you know, even kind of deceiving you, throwing your perception off, it gets darkened and your eyes adjust to the dark and you can see things more clearly. So I think this is a time for really seeing into the dark more clearly in ourselves and in the world. And let me see, one more. Oh yeah, November 29th, Mercury Sun. So Mercury will catch the sun in Scorpio. So past that K2, so K2 is 7 degrees of Scorpio. Mercury's going to catch the sun at 13 degrees. So this is basically a time when it's like the intellect, Mercury, and the soul basically meet up. You know, and the light of the soul fills the intellect. So this is a time to really reflect on everything that's going to be transpiring around these times, because it's going to get intense for a lot of people, especially people who thought they could just take the media and what they learn in school about the world at face value. So they're going to have to reflect and look deep into themselves and see if they want to go crazy about this stuff or if they want to accept a new view of the world. So that's pretty much that. I'll definitely be talking about these moons and especially these eclipses. I'll do a video definitely where I get deeper into the whole, all the symbolism with this whole Medusa and Perseus symbolism. That's a lot to unpack. So thanks for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. And like I said, if you haven't subscribed, I ask you to do so. You'll get a notification every time. And if you have not had a Vedic astrology reading with me, I highly recommend it. Like I always say, I don't do astrology to entertain. I do astrology as an empowerment tool. It's a way to get a deeper look into yourself, to gain more confidence in things you intuitively know about yourself, but didn't quite have the confidence to run with. And I've been in that situation many times myself. It's a way to, it's a roadmap for life. It's a roadmap for the current events, because you can see hidden opportunities, hidden gifts, hidden talents, even hidden pitfalls in life. And I custom make you a meditation. I give you a Vedic mantra, Sanskrit mantra, to basically chant. And that gets you basically deeper in your own mind so you can start reprogramming it. And I give you a yantra to work with too. It's basically a mandala that helps do that too. It helps you to start reprogramming your own conscious. It's a nice little ritual. I do rune readings, and I also have some videos for sale for download. So some Qigong videos. Qigong is an amazing mind-body practice. It's really changed my life. It optimizes physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Highly recommend it. So thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you later. Have a good one.